So today I'm not reviewing the full game because I have to work tomorrow and I'm very tired, obviously. We're going to take a look at the draft and the first play that put Griffin ahead, because I think that's the most important one. Because both times I think G2 draft is something that they just cannot recover with. And that's very important to highlight. Griffin played very well today. I was very impressed with all of their games, honestly. They're very tight. Sword had a good performance, and that's what happens when you fire the most toxic person at your branch, I guess. But we don't know the full story, so to each their own. Loved you on the analysis desk today. It's Yamato. Hope you're back again. I'm back tomorrow for the Fnatic group, so we'll see how that goes. Maybe I can give Fnatic some luck, because they definitely need it. We're gonna fast forward until we see the full draft. Very important to the full draft. So I really like the Shen support. I really like the Shen support, not necessarily because it's good into Yasuo Gragas, because Yasuo Gragas can do fine into Shen support. Gragas E is very good. Today, Mickey played very bad, reminiscent of what we saw in the best of 5. Jankos and Kiana, 2 games have been disastrous. He played 1 game. That was great. Why do you think they banned Volibear? Because Volibear is pretty decent into Gragas Yasuo. You can CC with the dash, and there's a lot of tools there. I don't think they had Shen in mind, because I think they were just considering the matchup. But I think if I'm giving up potential ban here, probably like Volibear is not a bad ban, but the quality of the champion definitely falters later on in the game. It's quite good against Lee as well, so the argument can be made that Volibear ban is decent. Lens has been amazing. Honestly, Lens was really good this day. But if we take a look at this draft, so Gragas first pick. This should have been Kiana first pick. But then again, Jankos Kiana has been quite disappointing. Akali, flex blind, you can never go wrong with this, and then with Kiana. So already here, there's a lot of champions that you don't want to play when you see Akali Kiana on the enemy team, because they have a lot of tools to get to you. So a lot of champions are already out of the pool because of this. So Akali Kiana is a great rotation, especially here because Rakan is out and Xayah and Kaiser is in the picture. So third pick you can always choose. Third pick you have options. Even if enemy denies AD, you can pick it later. When other teams, in a lot of cases, pick AD here, meaning 1, 2, and then they pick support third. Here, if you have power picks like Akali and Kiana open, you should take them. And Lehens has a very nice champion pool to adapt to the Kaiser pick, because even here, 3 bans were thrown at him, even 4th, 5th, and Shen was the lock-in. Leona was a questionable ban here from Griffin. Shen as a pick. I think Griffin were very prepared here, and they didn't feel the need to third pick support. Another support that's potentially open here is, in fact, Thresh. Thresh is not that bad into this team. And I think the first 3 are very strong from Griffin. The bans on Elise, I like the Elise ban. The priority for sure, they would have first pick Elise over Gragas. I think Elise red side ban. The top best teams at the tournament so far have been using a lot of Elise, and I think it's definitely one of the strongest junglers in the game, if not the strongest, because I think the best of the best are going to take advantages with Elise and then snowball that very fast. I think G2 and Griffin, the moment one team takes the lead, it doesn't seem to die down. I do believe Griffin severely outdrafted any team they played against today. Very, very Very, very good. Griffin, SKT, and RNG best team so far. I think G2 should be included there. I think G2 got smashed today, but I think they also got outdrafted severely today. Is G2 Nautilus ban necessary? Well, it's easy to say in hindsight what is necessary and what is not, because in the end, Griffin had a great pick here coming into the last round with the Shen pick. So you could argue that all of these 3 bans were useless in the sense of Griffin, like G2 banning Galio, Nautilus, Volibear, and then they still had a Shen. So here you could argue that, Griffin was just really, really prepared for this scenario where they had many support options, and Lehens has just the perfect champion pool to support the Kaiser in any shape or form. You just want like a fat, thick boy where that can apply Kaiser stacks, and Shen is really good against G2. Shen has been a very big pick for Griffin for a long time, and against G2 specifically, when you are allowed to last pick, in this case Sword last pick Jace, then you can definitely figure out ways to use it and ways to snowball. And we saw in the finals that G2 struggled against Shen in occasions where they had ways to activate the Shen. And already here with a Kali pick, there is many ways to activate the Shen, and Sword is going to last pick. So yeah, second wave bans, you can argue while Griffin chose Shen, these super bans are not that necessary, right? Not necessary at all. And maybe if they ban top laners, because Sword has a very thin champion pool. If they ban Jace, for example, what does he pick here? That could be a big question, because Sword champions pool has been, he played a good Akali today, so maybe that's the reason why. Akali is a flex, and maybe they're considering Akali into their blind pick Kayle. Because this is the second time G2 picks Kayle, and I honestly think it was one of the biggest issue of this draft. If the third pick Ryze here, I feel like they are left with more options. I think Kayle is just not that great. I think Kayle is very overrated. Kayle gives you very little in draft, because here Griffin, the way they picked, it doesn't really get impacted by Kayle. There's not many champions. There's not many champions that are weak against Kayle early, and I think Kayle is just too weak early for Kayle to truly matter. She's so weak early, and even late game she's not that fantastic. She lacks a lot in range, lacks so much in range, and a lot of the meta mid laners that are being played right now. Let's think of Syndra, for example, Ryze with Phase Rush, and for example LeBlanc, Cassio, we saw some games. All very long range bursty champions that are great against Kayle. If I'm playing Ryze against Kayle, I'm super happy because my trade pattern is so good into Kayle. Kayle wants to punch, 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 and all in. She wants to use Gunblade, but what I'm going to do with Ryze is I'm going to Q, E, Q, W, Q, and proc Phase Rush, even if she Gunblades, walk away, wait on cooldowns, walk in, and step right back in. So if I'm playing Ryze against Kayle, I'm super happy because I'm going to scale like a beast too. LeBlanc trading pattern, also very good against a Kayle, can set up ganks very easily. Cassio controls space very well because Kayle has very short range. And on top of that, the biggest weakness is now that she has poor lane matchups. So we saw the Kayle against SKT play the Kayle that won a game. And that was cool, you know. We had, you know, the bottom. And then we had Xiaohu playing KO against Clutch Gaming. That was another win. And then, honestly, the kill against Garanyumi didn't really... Like, the kill really didn't do much. Like the Susana was super fed, and I think the KO could have been whatever. I don't think it was a winner, you know. So I've been very unimpressed by KO. I feel like it works in scenarios where the team plays worse. Zombie played versus Jace. They played against a weaker team, right, and they got away with it. Like KO works against teams that are worse, but as quarterfinals happens and we continue, I think KO is going to be a massive trap that is going to leave a lot of liability. I don't think the payoff is good enough to get away with it. Yamato and LEC Final Wonder played Kled, Irelia, Akali. The thing is, you can't necessarily blind pick these champions. And G2 are putting themselves in trouble by banning Renekton on blue. Renekton is a champion that many teams blind pick on blue, and it's not necessarily a good ban on blue side, and I think that's an issue. I think they came into this match here prepared to blind pick Kayle top, and I don't think that's a good mindset. He blind picked Vladimir as well, which was a problem because he died 1v1 against Licorice. And I think right now G2 have a bit of a crisis in terms of choosing what they blind pick top, and I feel like they've gotten away with a lot, and today they were punished quite heavily against Griffin. Showmaker also played Kayle versus IG. That was a win. I don't recall. I think I don't recall that specific game. But all in all, my general feeling of Kayle is that she's a bait. Another thing here, so we spoke about the KO and why I think it's an issue. Second wave ban, could consider a Jace, but they had a Akali flex, which is why they stepped away from it. Shen, fourth pick, is just so amazingly strong against G2 because they really like to generate pressure, spread pressure, and count on the fact that they get in the head of the enemy in terms of map movement, and Shen compensates for a lot of that. Griffin has a team composition now that is very nasty and scales very, very well as well. Here, G2's composition, if they fall behind, they cannot really recover because Rise doesn't have the same amount of freedom in split push as he had in previous game when he played against Hong Kong Attitude. It's also G2's composition has only one way to go, and that is forward. So here, if G2 fall behind with a composition that's very weak early on, it is very difficult to recover because their composition can only go forward. And I think this was a complete massacre coming already from the draft. Here, when Griffin reached level 6, the amount of tools they have to create the superior play is just so good. It's also, you know, stepping into the game, the thing I want to highlight first is so Yasuo, Gragas should do fine into Shen, Kai'Sa. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible matchup. I think it's okay. Definitely, if G2 are the ones that snowball, then all of a sudden you can get away with a lot of kills. But managing your wave with Yasuo Gragas is very difficult. It's very hard to, with the jungle, to decide we're going to play around bottom. Because early on, Yasuo is not that strong, and then Griffin can decide to freeze in front of the tower after the bounce. So even though Yasuo bot lane is quite strong, they're playing against an AD carry that also plays Yasuo bot lane. Griffin has one of the most experienced bot lanes in terms of playing different shit than just ADs. So they are very well aware of Yasuo's weaknesses. And while Yasuo has looked very OP over in Europe, you can't necessarily say the same. Oh, I apologize, I'll move the camera now. Can't necessarily say the same on the world stage because they're playing against different players. And Griffin was amazing today. Chovy was an absolute beast. Lehens was really strong as well. Tarzan was amazing, and I think Sword and Viper were, you know, a bit in the shadow, but they weren't liabilities, and they played a strong game too, even though the rest of the team was a focus. So here you can see Yasuo Gragas are recovering. Shen and Kai'Sa, always you want to look to freeze the wave in front of the tower. Two melee champions have a hard time pushing the wave into the tower all the way. Janko's now hovering into bot side, but Sword not minding too much, because we could clearly see as this game developed, Sword's mindset in this lane matchup was to just he planned to keep TP. He didn't plan to play for lane, he planned to keep TP, make sure that the play onto bottom doesn't happen, and he knows that Kill is so useless and weak early on that that impact alone from Jace is going to hurt G2 a lot, because everything's going to come back to him. Everything's going to come back to him in the form of a Shen ultimate. So Sword, you could argue that maybe he should get more lane advantages in this lane matchup, but it doesn't make that much of a difference. And I think Sword just has his eye on what is going to win games. So that's very reminiscent of a lot of other top laners, which might be exposed as a flaw later on in the tournament, but in this game it definitely worked, because it really tied Griffin's game plan together nicely here. Lee Sin's on top side as well, Jace has to respect the jungle, he put 2 wards down. Akali base almost gets cancelled here, Cap's already TP'd back. Let's see if Chovy keeps his TP or walks. It looks as he's going to TP, or oh, he's walking, Seems like he's going to be on time. This good trade he did before gave him a base opportunity, and here what you do against Yasuo if you played against it in solo queue is that early levels you want to build waves, stack them, make sure they can't all in you, and then afterwards when they build the wave, just freeze the wave under the tower. Because as we said before, melee champions, they need to over and over, they need to find ways to put the wave into the turret, which is very difficult, and G2 are doing the wise thing here of freezing because they want to look for these all-in opportunities. But now there's no freeze from G2, they're looking to push out, they're looking to base as well to match and use the fact that they're going to have 1 wave advantage here on the base in terms of gold. 1000 showing onto bottom, considering he took the plant and the ward spotted the plant, no one's going to take it. This was absolutely beautiful from Lemons. So while we're talking about potential freezes and such, Lehens manages to do it on his own. So here he manages to freeze 3 range creeps, and this is where Lehens' monster performance begins. Because already now we spoke about how difficult it is for Yasuo and Gragas to push it into the turret. Shen almost managed to freeze this wave, or he did manage to freeze this wave on his own. Why I said almost is because Yasuo was already recalling, he expected the turret to land, the wave to hit, but Lehens managed to freeze, and Viper is here with items and Perks has none. So here Perks didn't recall yet, he didn't get to base. There is no advantage here for G2, and Lehens managed to freeze, and this was phenomenal. And honestly, very game-changing for the lane matchup here on the bottom side. And once again here, Griffin are pushing the wave into the turret, and they can set up the situation where they can freeze. But here lies also the other fundamental difference, is that Wonder TP'd back, and Sword kept his TP. And that is why the CS number looked rather even, and why I kind of, flamed a little bit on Twitter. But after some analysis, Spawn called it out on Twitter as well, that the TP was kept for Sword here, and that's going to set up a fantastic Drake situation here that's going to secure them the prio. Because Sword is going to continue to push, he's going to continue to pressure. And while he is in that position, he keeps TP and spreads that pressure very easily on the rest of the map. So his Sword pushes, he steps into enemy blue side jungle, very standard moves, very good moves. He's just going to play for prio, let Kayle farm, and use it to pressure the whole map. He knows by the time Shen is going to be level 6, that pressure is going to come back into him, and they're going to find ways to recover his lane advantage. I think Griffin truly showed today what they're capable of, and there were worries of potential choking, but I agree with Kelsey Moser's notion that they were losing against stronger teams. I think coming into the end of the regular split, they also looked worse and worse. They've been always very good at beating worse teams, and I think this is a massive strength that Griffin has, while G2 and SKT, for example, the #1 seeds from the region, lost and dropped a lot of games against lower teams. Griffin showed impeccable fundamentals in always trying to find the right way to play the game throughout the game. I think in finals it was a lot of stubbornness in draft, and I think Griffin are very reliant on everything falling on the right place. I feel like everything that they do is very structured and calculated, but if you find a way to strike back there, I think Griffin are taken aback by this. And this is very normal for any team, right? If you have a plan and the enemy throws a wrench in it, then you're going to be caught off guard. So that's not necessarily like a big weakness for Griffin. I think Sword on the right picks as well is not much of a weakness, more of like a solid top laner that's gonna be okay. That's something we have to pay attention to as Sword plays, for example, against the Shy, for example. But Griffin had an amazing performance today, while G2 looked a lot worse than they should have had. And I think Griffin made some fundamental decisions in this game that gave them all the priority, and G2 had no ways of recovering. So this was the first initial play, Sword with the TP, Chovy as well with the TP right on top of the Drake. And this was, maybe Sword TP wasn't necessary. I thought Chovy's TP was in fact Sword TP, but here is a massive loss of tempo for Jankos. Tarzan is going to recover big time here and be level 6 first, if I remember correctly. And Lee Sin really cares about his tempo, because after Shen 6 here, it's going to be difficult to find any play on mid lane. It's going to be difficult to find any play on a top lane either. Sword comes back in time to catch the stop wave. As you can see, it lost 4 melee creeps. All the range creeps are intact. So he's going to be a bit unhappy, but all I know, keeping the TP was a big part of Griffin's big plan here. And looking at G2's draft is just so limited in how much they can do early game. I think they got away with something with a draft like this when it came to the Hong Kong Attitude game, or when it came to the first game against Griffin, because Griffin drafted themselves into something that was so heavily reliant on the early game, and it all fell apart because Ornn stole a golem and Caps cancelled the Raptors. So there's a lot of things that are falling into place here that Griffin couldn't show while they were playing G2 the first time. And I tweeted this out and people were laughing at me. Fine, that's sometimes sometimes. Oh, sorry. So this is also another big swing, and probably the game-winning scenario for Griffin is when they use the pry on bottom after Jankos had to give up full bottom side. We spoke about how Tarzan would be ahead on tempo. The base happens, and here G2 are not hard pushing bottom, they are slow pushing. In fact, it looks almost like a freeze. We can't judge from here because we don't see, but if the bottom wave is frozen, that is the perfect time for Griffin to look for a swap. And here Wunder gets flash taunted. That's the first big issue. And then of course Jankos here walking on river when no one's showing on either top. There's also a Shen ultimate, and the collapse is very free here from Griffin while they're contesting the river. So a big blunder here from Jankos, and also G2 not being aware of this possibility that this swap might come in. Griffin going for it because they see Yasuo not hard pushing bottom. In fact, he was just freezing, as we could judge from this perspective. And now Sword went through mid to be able to react onto a play that might happen top, but he can rock into bottom for free because he knows that Jankos is dead, so he can easily catch this wave on bottom and potentially survive a 2v1 dive. So this kill on Jankos gives Griffin so much. Kayle showed on top, it gives them the Herald, it gives them the wave on bottom. Also on top of that, Griffin managed to deny a lot of creeps on top, managed to get one plating. There's a lot of moving things here that matter for this play. Yanko's dying a river is a big blunder, and G2 not recognizing that there's a possibility that might swap is also problematic. It's also on top of the fact that they managed to swap and bottom was frozen is that they're swapping into a side that has a Jace into a Kayle. Whenever you have a matchup up top that is always in your favorite priority-wise, then the swap is going to be more powerful. And now, you look at G2's composition. Wave clear is very scarce. You want the Kayle and the Ryze to split push them as much as possible, but with the gank potential of Qiyana and Akali being able to match together with Shen ultimate, how do you really play this game for G2? G2 now with Yasuo, Gragas, those are the champions that need to be mid lane. Ryze could go mid lane as well, but there's no one really that can wave clear in mid lane. So Griffin definitely set up to win this game based off of picks alone and also reaching this point in the game. Now the big question mark is Griffin's usage of Rift Herald. I can't recall how they use it, but I remember it being quite nasty. Lehen's in position here, Yanko's getting cut in half. Lehen's playing beautifully around pink wards all around, just waiting patiently, not exposing his position, and Wunder's TP is in fact one of the worst TPs I've seen the whole tournament. So Wunder TPs, dies, and here the collapse happens. The Shen ult is on, the Shen taunt comes, Gragas dies, and of course Perks, I think he gets away. Caps, I don't know if he gets away. I don't know what they're chasing. Oh, okay. Okay. So I don't want to linger too long onto these games, because after this play here, the game is definitely over. Viper's gonna get so much money, and there is just no way for G2 to recover unless there's any major mistakes from Griffin's side. And Griffin, when they got leads, even in scenarios where they didn't have leads, for example, the first game against C9, they were very, very far behind and they should have been in a losing position. Yet they managed to recover because they recognized what they should have done in the game. And I think this is probably the Griffin's biggest strength, and also G2's biggest strength. Both of these teams, when they get a lead, they have a very hard time letting go, but Griffin is very much cleaner in their approach. I was so impressed by Griffin that I think Griffin showcased more today than SKT did in their 3 games. And that's a bit of an unfair assessment of SKT because they have 3 more games to show off with. But Griffin showed an amazing level today that was very impressive and definitely looking like something that could be a tournament winner, because I think SKT struggled. People are very excited about the SKT and RNG game, but I think that particular game was not that beautiful in the sense of making the correct decisions, because RNG definitely should have won that game, but instead greedily pushed forward when they shouldn't have. And it took SKT very long to recognize what they should have done in order to win the game, which was split push, right? Split push, split push, split push. And that came so late into the game. Enemy bot lane was always exposed because they had TP advantage on TF permanently, and they could have easily poked at Nashor. So SKT has definitely shown some roughness around the edges. This draft was beautiful. This draft was monstrous. Really, really monstrous. And now Viper, sure, he has some CS disadvantages here, but he got a full solo turret. He got a full solo turret, and he managed to get all those platings as well. So his gold is relatively even here to Yasuo. And G2 can pretty much do only what we saw now, is to try to find some catches, but their only good play of this game was quickly rejected by Griffin, because G2 continued to push, and they got sent back to the abyss. So yeah, if you're playing Kayle, what are you gonna do this game? Absolutely nothing. And I feel like this is the case for a lot of the games where Kayle is in a losing position, because I don't think she contributes a lot in terms of winning either. I think she's fantastic when your jungle carries you. She's fantastic when your team carries you. Then she looks amazing because she has this smooth sailing, because she has wind right behind her wings. So here, Perk's doing the good move here of, you know, not a lot of Yasuo players are doing this. A lot of boosts, the ones on, when you have, when you're not on attack speed cap, you should always EQ a creep before you ult, because it's just better, because you can land the Q on the target that you ult, and you can time it and do more damage. So please do. So Niski playing Yasuo today, and it was quite disgusting. No offense. What about Kled over Kale to get Ryze going? Kled blind pick is very dangerous to do. It worked against... it worked very well against Fnatic because Weipo has such a small champion pool, but Kled blind pick is not a thing that that Wunder wants to do. Not at all. It's definitely very, very tough to envision a world where Wunder is going to be allowed to blind pick Kled at this tournament. It is very difficult to blind pick top, and I feel like Griffin figured that out. I think a lot of teams need to put more emphasis on Akali, because Akali is one of the top lanes that is still playable, and Renekton cannot be banned on blue side because that's one of the champions you need to play. Right now, I think the viable blind pick top, potentially, Akali with some bans, needs some bans, which you're going to be allowed to do because they're not going to pick counters into Akali on first 3 if you pick Akali first 3. So I think Akali, there has to be more pry on Akali. Jace is also potentially a good blind, but you can run into, for example, an Ornn, as we see in the next game. Vladimir is also a tough blind pick to do. We saw 2 times the NA teams were playing Aatrox into Vladimir, and that seems like a good matchup into Aatrox. Vladimir is not a great blind pick. Ryze is the same, not a great blind pick. You can definitely find picks that are good into Ryze, and Aatrox is even one of them. You can play Irelia into Ryze. Ryze is not the same as before, where you win a lot of lane matchups because you abuse Corrupting Potion and the fact you get shield. Now you go Sapphire Crystal and look to scale. So Ryze lane matchups have definitely become worse after the changes. Rumble could be a potential blind pick as well, but you need to have the right composition for it. Right now the junglers that are being played are not that great with Rumble. Elise is also another great jungler that helps you blind pick top, because all of a sudden when you have Elise, you can compensate for having worse top lane matchup. For example, if you play Kled Elise, all of a sudden the top lane champ that you play doesn't matter too much. Sejuani being nerfed is a big problem for top lane, because Sejuani Camille, Sejuani Renekton was something that people like to blind pick on top lane. And now with Sejuani out of the meta, it becomes more hard and harder. Now with Elise also starting to get banned and a lot of eyes. Yeah, Elise was getting banned. Yeah, so Elise got banned. Elise is a very important pick. Elise is super important. I'm surprised we didn't see it because it got banned, my friend. It got banned. Elise is just too powerful. Honestly, NA shouldn't even come to World's waste of time. Well, you don't need to watch it. I think that is quite rude, what you just said. So, blind picking top is a discussion I want to have. By the end of the group stages, I want to summarize what picks are strong and what picks are worse, and some of the issues in the current meta that the teams are facing and they need to deal with. And Griffin, once again, is one of the better teams in terms of how they dealt with it, because they get away with picking Akali. In one of the games today, they picked Akali. It was against Cloud9 specifically. They picked Akali and, of course, Camille, and that made it super difficult. So here, Griffin's siege potential is super strong as well. They win split because of Shen ultimate and Akali being ahead. Akali not super ahead, but she's in a decent state, and there is no potential here of G2 walking up at all. because the Shen taunt on Yasuo when he's dashing on the wave and trying to clear the wave. He's gonna die. Lee can't really walk up, he's too far behind, and this game is just completely over unless Griffin make any major blunders. So we're going to move on and not look at this any further. We can look at the next fight potentially. Tarzan slaughtering, fish filleting here. Mickey, K-Lult gets dropped right away. Chovy has ultimate on. Perks dies and Griffin walk away. I don't think anything in particular happens further than this. I think there's the team fight on top lane where they try to go, but they don't manage to accomplish anything. I think they tried to go on. Is it Jace they tried to go on? I don't really recall. I think it's Jace. So this is the game ending play. So here, boom, the kick happens. They try to one shot, but Shenhold lands, and Griffin is right on the wings. Kali TPs. Sword survives because he has Tabi Ninja, and you know, there's no issues at all. Caps misses some Qs, but I don't think it will make a difference. Here you have to press B on Rise, but I think he's just going to take the TP, like the teleport, to just survive, but he ends up dying, of course. So here, Griffin 1-0. I want to continue now with Griffin against C9, because that was such a destruction in draft as well that that I've never seen before this entire tournament. So we had the Elise first pick. Elise, a very big prior on this group, and I think this is something that so this draft was an absolute massacre. So Renekton blue side ban, Elise first pick. Okay, Elise first pick, Renekton blue side ban. Interesting. Zyrakan gets locked in, and Cloud9 picked Kayle and Kai'Sa. So this made it very free here, because usually you want to lock in Zyrakan, and this is something that Griffin were expecting, and they wanted to play, for example, Kai'Sa and Galio into it, and but here they got everything. They got absolutely everything. Elise, Zyrakan, and enemy has Kayle, Kai'Sa, Galio as a response. Okay, so you already have 3 lane matchups that are going to get pushed in. Not 3, but 2 lane matchups. That's all we know for now. Second wave, Cloud9 decide to ban Irelia, which is something that Chovy played, and which is completely fine. Jace third ban, Cloud9 are trying to target their sword in the top lane, and then the GP second wave, and they think that they have a lockdown every champion that sword plays. But here with the Akali Camille rotation, it's just an absolute massacre. The mistake here from Cloud9 is that they didn't fourth pick Akali, because if they fourth pick Akali, they would have a very powerful flex, and it would be impossible for Griffin to blind pick. You would have to blind pick something very silly. And here with the Akali Camille rotation, you just can't pick a top laner. You can't pick a top laner, and both of these champions are gonna destroy Kayle. So once again, Kayle showing us that she is in fact a massive problem. This is a terrible draft. Cloud9's draft is vomit-worthy. It's honestly something that belongs in the toilet together with a digested burrito. You know, this is terrible. At the same time, Griffin is, you know, absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, this draft. Akali Camille rotation is just such a, you know, you just put Cloud9's head on a guillotine and cut it in half. So this game, if we compare these two drafts, winning lane everywhere, okay? So Griffin win every lane. Elise has prio against Nocturne early, and Elise has every winning lane. Elise can set up to dive any of these lanes. She can push out Nocturne wherever she wants and look for a dive. Here, the moment they lock in Shen, Akali goes top, and Camille goes mid. Very easy. Here, you have to fifth pick, maybe Vladimir. Vladimir could be fine. You have to 5th pick Vladimir or Darius, you know. it's very difficult to pick top lane here. They went for the Shen, but Akali into Shen, very free matchup for Akali. Camille into Kayle, also very free matchup for Camille, especially when she has Elise jungle. Later as the game proceeds, we can take a small look here on the early game, because you could see Tarzan misjudged the timing of his invade here. He went for 3 camps topside into red, and then he wanted to invade blue, but the reason he misjudges the timer here is because Shen just gives one of the best leashes on the planet. So if we take a step back, the Q of Shen just does so much damage onto the red. So Tarzan misjudges the timing big time. Darius gets smashed versus Camille too. No, she doesn't. Darius wins Camille. You want to 1v1? I will throw you down the dumpster. I can cancel your E with my E, and you cannot get away. And Darius with Hexdrinker has chances against Akali, but Darius obviously is a dogshit champion. The point that I was trying to make is not that Darius was a good pick there. It was more about, like, what do you pick there that's going to do anything in their matchups? I am not arguing for Cloud9 to pick Darius here. It's just, it's difficult to pick a champion that is good into Camille and Akali when Renekton and Gangplank and Jace is banned, and those were 3 top laners that were banned this game. Mordekaiser would have been okay here. I think Mordekaiser struggles against Akali. I think also Mordekaiser struggles against Camille Elise, but definitely Morde could have been a pick. That's fair. What do you suggest as the best choice there? Not Victor. No. It's just Akali 4th pick is the best. Isn't this a shtick? Well, the next portion of the draft is, while Griffin has great matchups everywhere, good matchups everywhere, so they win every matchup, and they have a jungler with prio, later C9 don't have a chance either. Griffin outscale C9. As crazy as it might seem, you want to dive onto the Xayah? You want to dive onto the Elise? You want to dive onto the Akali? You must be smoking some Boba Ganoush Kush, you know? To think that you have any opportunity here with C9's composition to dive onto Griffin's composition, because every single one of these champions have tools to avoid any wild combinations that C9 might throw at them. And that is barred that they are very far behind when the time reaches level 6 here for C9. It is very difficult, next to impossible, against a good team to not reach level 6 without bleeding bad. Without bleeding very bad. So there is nothing. There is nothing that C9 is waiting for. Sword is gonna have prio against Shen permanently. Afterwards, he can follow with E. You want to combo onto an Akali that's gonna have Mercury threads? Not possible. Not possible. Camille gets comboed on, she's gonna ult the moment the Gali ult lands, and then she's going to be able to E away. Very straightforward. Elise, you want to combo on Elise, she's gonna repel everything, and then you're gonna lose. This was a complete massacre in draft. Complete massacre in draft. And C9 had some sense of redemption if they 4th pick Akali. So here I was talking about Tarzan and his mistiming because he didn't judge the leash of Shen that well. So Tarzan looks at Svenskeren, realizes he's too late, and just shadows him and walks with him all the way to the wolves. Svenskeren gets pushed out, and Tarzan did in fact waste some time here, but it ends up paying off anyway because Svenskeren goes into topside. Svenskeren leashes some mid XP, and that's something that you can be very happy about if you're a mid laner, if the enemy jungle is leashing XP from mid. So here as well, Zaya Rakan with the Prion bot, we mentioned that. I think they have some resemblance of opportunities on bot, but I think the Rakan just never has to W in. Just never W in, play on poke with Rakan, play to punch the wave, and Galio can never commit on you. And Zaya has cleanse. So I think if Griffin just play around the wave, play on poke, and don't play on all-in, they will always win. Otherwise, if Rakan W's in, for example, he has Aftershock, so that's a nice adaptation, because usually you get to hit the W of Rakan. It's not like Galio prevents that. Usually with Galio is that when the W starts flying, you charge W with Galio, you let go, you CC up the Rakan, and you one-shot him. But this Aftershock is a clever adaptation. I think you can go the poke route definitely as well. So this is the first dive. All the Pry on the World Griffin are sending 3-man here. Lehens is just saying hello, and then he's going back into bottom. Big problem with the draft. And then here, Nocturne, you know, Sanskren, I feel so bad for Sanskren because he had no fucking opportunities at all this game. He's trying to find the crab, but he's too late, and Taza managed to dive mid lane, then walk up into top side crab. Sanskren goes for the Q here, but this 2v2 obviously is no chance. Sanskren is being very greedy here, and Licorice is too far behind in HP to do anything. And here, Licorice dies. And the game is over. The game is super over. Game is monster over. Top is freezing, and every move that Licorice is going to do from now on is going to be a gamble. He itemizes double longsword, and he has no chance. Maybe if he bought Null Magic Mantle here, something would change, but he has no chance. Bad matchup, no kill. Sword freezing the wave, and he's going to be 6 against 5. And Shen has no ult to counteract the ult. Niski gets one-shotted. Disastrous. Disastrous. So this is once again Griffin absolutely obliterating a team in draft. So this is beautiful to see. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Griffin has drafted the best out of any team at the World Championship so far. That's just my assessment. They don't touch the kale. They are smiling every time they see enemy kill, and they're very happy. Something I want to fast forward to is, you know, later C9 desperately tried to create a play where they make a combination with their ultimates. I think it's here. So they try to make a combo. Of course, I understand that that Griffin is very far ahead here, and they would have won the fight even if C9 got the best Momo combo of their life. Niski face checks as well here. 2 ults are used already. Nocturne dives in. Honestly, this is not a good example because C9 are inting very hard. So let's just trust me on the fact that it's very hard to dive Zaya, Akali, Rakan, and Camille and Elise. It's also that the damage is so hard. You know, the damage from Griffin is so bursty and at the same time so spread out, so it's very difficult to do a proper KO ultimate. KO ultimate is not that great against Akali because it's hard to predict the Akali R. It's too fast. Elise damage is also very difficult to KO ultimate because she's going to cocoon and then combo you, right? So there is many reasons why KO is very weak here. So Griffin, very happy with the fact that they got to see many goddamn kill picks. So Griffin G2 tiebreaker game. Let's take a look at that one. This is the one we're gonna continue, and this is going to be my conclusion on Griffin from today, because I hope everyone understands that I am quite exhausted, and I'm doing analysis tomorrow with Fnatic and RNG and the last team, SKT, sorry. And a week 2 curse, yeah. Javerian, have a good night, Yamato. You too have a good night. We're not done here if you think I'm leaving. but I'm going to finish up here. Are you on the desk tomorrow? Yes, I am. So I'm going to be there to give some fighting words for Fnatic, and let's see what they're going to give to us. So here, G2's adjustment between the games was to just take every pick that Griffin took and hope for the best. So G2 completely abandoning Kayle and looking for a stronger blind pick in order to hijack Swords champion pool. So they go for the Jace. Something that is untold, and something that Papa Smithy was very excited about, and he called out while I was in the cast room with him, that it's time for Ornn Hub, is what he said specifically. So the Ornn pick comes in, and like Sword is one of the best Scions. He's a great Scion, and this is two picks that are fine into Jace, always fine into Jace. But we're going to round this draft off, and then we get to see what the situation is. So, as we see the Ornn, let's see the Ornn. There we go, the Ornn. This is where we stay, and this is where we land. So, Kai'Sa is still open. That's important to highlight. Kai'Sa is still open. Perkz opts in for Zoe. Here, Zoe and Cassio, the flex doesn't matter. As much as you might imagine, as much as you want to think that, oh, they're geniuses because Zoe Cassio's flex here, they see all of their matchups already. So Zoe, Cassio, Perk, Zoe, Cassio, flex is completely irrelevant here. Completely irrelevant. It doesn't make one difference at all. Shen, a big adaptation here for Griffin is that I think the first initial game, I just want to make sure, Griffin versus G2, we're going to take a step back here. The first game, we have day 6. Well, that's me. The first game, Griffin banned Rakan. And then the next game, in fact, tiebreaker, they just threw off G2 Esports completely by banning Yasuo. So here they predict the adaptation from G2 that they want to first pick Qiyana, and then boom, they get the Zyrakan lock-in onto them. And now the Shen pick all of a sudden is much less relevant than before. The Shen pick is not as great against Zyrakan because you actually have options here to pressure better than the Yasuo Gragas. The Yasuo Gragas are very limited in how much they can and cannot do because you have so many options of how you can manage the wave against the Yasuo Gragas. Many options, and we saw Lehens truly showing us what are the possibilities in this matchup in terms of freezing. So Zyrakan, Lee, very strong rotation here. The Lee Sin Qiyana matchup is something that a lot of junglers like. Lee Sin has the option of just one-shotting Qiyana and breaking her neck at around level 7. So it's definitely a fine matchup, especially because Qiyana doesn't want to spend that much money on boots. Buying Ninja Tabi on Qiyana is Ninja Tabi is something that a lot of junglers buy into Lee not to get one-shotted. But Qiyana specifically doesn't like buying that. You want to have Mobies, you want to have lethality as soon as possible, so you become a bigger and bigger threat. There's also that Xayah is one of the better AD carries against Qiyana as well. That's important to note. So already from the first 3 picks, you know, G2 just stealing all Griffin's picks, and the fact that Jace is the 3rd pick here, and the enemy team and the second wave bans are Gangplank and Rise. It's kind of strange. It's kind of strange. G2, I like their adaptation though of the Akali ban, but it ends up with Griffin picking Galio here. So I think the Casio is definitely fine into Galio. It's definitely a winning matchup, but the Zoe is where you need to reconsider. I think picking Zoe puts yourself in a position where the enemy last pick tank is just going to be too powerful. So unless you ban some of the tanks here second wave, which I don't think you can, because there's Nautilus, Scion, Ornn. I think they all fit the same purpose, but of course Ornn is the best one. So here Ornn just hard counters the entire enemy team. Ornn is not someone that you want to have to make heavy plays on. Having Shen into Ornn is very uninteresting. They have a lot of tools to engage. Playing Casio, Zoe, Jace against Ornn, Rakan, Galio honestly is not something that you want to do. So here we have a wombo combo from Griffin, but G2's composition is not Akali, Elise, Xayah, Rakan. So here Griffin won drafts even harder than they did the first game. Because here, sure, G2 has some options in the early game, so it's not quite a Cloud9 draft against Griffin. But if they don't snowball so out of control that they have so much damage that they can just roll through Griffin and survive and buy the right items to survive, for example, a Banshee's Veil. Banshees could be very strong against Griffin, but they have a lot of physical damage. If they can get to that point where they're so far ahead and can buy some of the defensive tools to deny some of the engages, okay. But it's not like it's such a blowout in the early game here. Xayah Rakan should win bottom against Zoe Shen. Cleanse is going to be very easy to pick up here for Xayah. She's not going to have any regrets. Early on, maybe they can find some ganks onto Casio, but Casio should be winning against Galio. So their advantage G2. Top side, advantage G2 because they have a Jace into Ornn. He's going to Klepto, but the moment Ornn is level 6, all of a sudden Jace turns into a liability. Can Shen make him survive? So there's too many what ifs. Just based on the fact that G2 need to be so far ahead to compensate for the fact that their composition is weaker makes me feel really bad about coming into this game. Because Ornn just counters this team so freaking hard. So freaking hard. And we saw Zoe being played with a Bard into Sivir specifically. That's a weaker bot lane. Xayah Rakan is premium. It is premium. Griffin has played internationally at Rift Rivals. And they did quite good. I mainly watch your stream just for the ASMR effect. Craigasm, Yamato fan. Thank you. I cannot relate to ASMR at all. I listen to my own voice often and I feel nothing. Oh, they lost to FPX. Okay, my bad. That was only a couple of best of ones. Yeah, it's just that we all have responsibility to be as accurate as possible in our language. It's very important. FPX is a strong team. I believe so too. People like to say that what's it called? They're bad because of their first game. LWX just ran it down. That was it. They were taking winning fights, they were making good decisions, but LWX was just running it down. Why didn't G2 play their comfort picks and pick Griffin comp? I think this was a panic jerk reaction after the first game because they realized how hard they got outdrafted, and then you put yourself in the mind that, oh, this champion's OP, this champion's OP, this champion's OP. Then all of a sudden you start picking them up and you realize that you're not picking them in the same situation as Griffin is doing. But this is all speculation. But to summarize this draft, Xayah Rakan was left open. Boom. Very good trade for Qiyana. I'm fine with that because Xayah Rakan is good into Qiyana. Qiyana is still a high tier champion. Response here is Jace Shen. Two champions that are not that amazing into Xayah Rakan already. Lee Sin gets third picked. Good pick into Qiyana. Second wave bans. What are they banning to set up this Jace pick? GP and Rise. I wouldn't care about these two champions. Galio gets 4th pick, which is a blind pick. Here, Griffin had the option of 4th picking Ornn, but they were afraid of a potential Jace mid, and then Ornn could have been exposed. But here, Cassiopeia top is not that likely. So Galio goes mid, Zoe Cassio is shown, and Ornn just hard counters the entire enemy team. Kiana wants to go full lethality, Jace wants to go full lethality. Zoe and Cassio cannot deal with Ornn ult. It's just not possible. So the Ornn was just beautiful, wonderful pick, and G2 just need to G2 need to snowball so freaking hard. But once again, how do you play at any point in this game? Zoe and Shen, as someone asked in the chat, winning mid lane and pushing bot lane Zoe is going to secure dragons. No, that's the thing. They don't push bot lane. Zoe doesn't naturally push against something like Xayah. She needs to be very respectful. She's going to have windows where she pushes depending on item choice. But regardless of how you judge these two teams, their play today, Griffin definitely had better drafts every game of the day. Every game of the day. The drafts were the best drafts I've seen in the tournament so far. Zoe has mana issues without blue. That's not so important, I think. So Zoe is very reliant on getting good drops in her summoners. She has a TP advantage, and maybe she can use that to swing something in her favor. But Galio lane phase is not that weak. You know, Cassio is not so strong early as she used to be because they shifted a lot of her power. And it's not like Cassio is going to hard stomp early. She's a scaling champion now. A scaling lane phase champion. When she starts to reach some of the items, she begins to hurt. Here G2's bot lane are leashing because they have Kiana jungle. Kiana jungle just needs to leash. Ornn has a very easy time of itemizing. He can just buy full armor. He's not going to die to any ganks. There is an option for G2 to put Cassio into top into Ornn. So of course Sword needs to be a bit careful because he can't do it too relentlessly. Perks getting all 3 melees. Griffin are using their level 1 spike as much as possible because honestly, what can really a Zoe do level 1? So here Griffin can easily take it slow, and Perks is forced to farm with his Q. Lance is maintaining bush prio. He has coins, so he doesn't want to poke too much. Lance is walking up and making the life of Perks as hard as possible. Right now Griffin are going to look for level 2. There are the auto attacks. W a long cooldown on bot lane matchup. Wunder just looking for some klepto picks. Klepto procs. That's what we were trying to say. Sword warding the top push, which is quite strange. Kiana now level 3, but she has no options of ganking here. Jankos, I think he got spotted here on mid. I'm not sure because he doesn't get pinged out, so I assume maybe not. Chovi's on mid lane, and Jankos is gonna be looking to ward. Tazan just looking to full clear, and it looks like Griffin are just taking a safe approach in the early game, because once again, similar to the previous game, if they reach level 6 without any major aches, then this game is going to be very easy for them to execute on. So the bottom matchup sees some trades, but Lehen's still on Aftershock duty, which I think is a mistake here. You don't want to have Aftershock. I think it's not that great against G2's bot lane. Against Galio makes a lot of sense, because right after you W, you will get comboed by the Galio. Jovi with the prio on mid lane, and the materializer on the cannon is going to hover into bottom side. Standard stuff, and the materializer is very nice for Galio. He can use his prio, and he can maybe find a gank pressure early on. Mickey in trouble. Mickey, honestly, without Tarzan being here, would be in big trouble. Mickey manages to do some moves, but this is one of the issues with that bot lane, and Kiana has been very inactive this early game because of mid lane situation, and also top side. Ganking the Ornn is a bit of a waste of time. Janko's just full clearing. To be fair, Kiana is one of the best scaling junglers in the game. Here, Perks walks up to pick up a flash. Did he pick up a flash? Flash for flash. He doesn't pick up the flash. It was right after the flash on the floor, so I misjudged this. Second wave of jungle camps are spawning now for Jankos on bottom side. Tarzan the same for top side. They did pretty much the exact same clear, but Tarzan ended up with a kill. So he's gonna base a bit later, and Jankos has tempo. But Griffin's bottom lane are matching their base timer together with Tarzan, so they're in no danger at all. So Griffin playing a very smart defensive game here. They are in no trouble at all, and they are just waiting for that power spike. There is a BF sword buy on bottom, which is a very big deal. Very problematic here how Mickey died, because without this BF, all of a sudden G2's bot lane situation looks different. Perks is going to look to push, he's going to keep his TP most likely, and maybe he's going to look to do a classic Perks TP to break a potential matchup. But Griffin are playing very tight. G2 have some tools at level 6 as well with the Shen ultimate. But here we can see the first attempt. G2 cannot 2v2 in the top wave because it's just too large. Here Sword is very late with his ultimate, and Tarzan gets into Wunder's head, honestly, by how long he waits with his Q. So here, Wunder flashes a bit too early, and obviously Tarzan misses the Q, but the flash is a bit too early from Wunder. Isn't Kiana jungle kind of troll? No. There's been many games where it completely 1v9'd, and I think if you take a look at Tarzan's performance in the first game, you can see what it's capable of. Kiana level 6 is very powerful. 2v2 wise, it's hard to lose with Kiana level 6 because it's one of the most powerful ultimates in the game. So level 6 2v2 and level 3 gank potential is very powerful because Kiana can connect with anything in the game with EQ, with water, root, and she has a lot of burst damage, which makes her ideal for 2v2s. But you need to have the right lanes for it. Chovy with the TP onto the Drake. Very straightforward. Griffin, after getting the Xayah BF sword, have the prior from bottom. Lehens is just spotting. And boom, Jankos is gonna get cut in half here, and that's going to be the game-winning play here. Wunder has no flash on top. Jankos just needs to give this up, but honestly, even from this position, it's difficult to play. Jankos needs to find space through mid lane 2v2. So right here in this position, G2's bot lane is getting pushed in. G2 should not have their jungler on this side of the map because they're just too weak. Galio had prio, or he didn't have prio, he just didn't give a shit about the midwave and just came here. Which is a play I love. It's a play that a lot of mid laners don't do. Why Zoe bot lane? I really don't know. I don't understand it. On level 1 to 6 she is useless, which is not true. Level 1, 2 she's pretty fucking useless, that's true. But level 3, that is, you know, her all-in is very strong. She has 2 Qs and she has a root. So Caps just caught a wave on mid lane and is walking now, but here is already dangerous. It's hard for Caps to walk down. There is a full vision control for Griffin, and Caps will have a hard time entering here because you see the moment Caps starts hovering, Griffin also back away. So here Jankos decides to walk for this red buff, and Griffin sniff it out. And this is the moment where Jankos gets his neck broken. You can see she gets kicked, Galio ult gets pumped out. And the Galio ult is not troll at all because it puts Galio in a position where he's ready to dive. So here Chovy is like, I'm gonna steal this wave. I am Galio. Haha, I'm a superhero. A heroic entrance. The taunt is a desperate taunt, but this is something that you have to do in G2's position. They need to fight onto the 2 members that are isolated. So G2 already here, they're dealt a bad hand. Imagine you have a piece that is hanging. Here you're trying to look to get at least one piece back. So basically you're looking for the 2-for-1 trade here. If they manage to, the chess analogy doesn't really apply here. G2 are just trying to force a fight 2v2 where they have good numbers before the wave crashes, because they're going to die here regardless. And obviously here Perks did the biggest play ever. Look at this. So he survives somehow. Flash, 1 HP, ult to avoid it, and then Viper doesn't get in range. Very nice. But of course, Griffin is still very happy with this. Caps managed to push 1 wave. Chovy loses maybe 3 waves of CS, but he doesn't give a crap because Lee Sin is monster fed now. Bottom is complete boom, and they're in a dominant position to win this game. Now Jankos Lehens, with this big prior from bottom, finds the gank on top, and there's no flash on Wunder, and his neck gets completely broken. Boom, and you know, the moment Jace loses flash on top, he's forever a target. Ornn ultimate is just too powerful, you cannot get away, and the moment either Rakan, Galio, even Xayah can gank top and they can kill, it's just, it needs some extra damage. So I chose Lehens as the MVP of the Shen game. This game, I think he deserved MVP as well, but I wasn't on the desk anymore, so I didn't give any feedback. But Lehens is an absolute monster. I think Tarzan got MVP for this one. Lehens was an absolute monster. So Ornn has his TP, and Ornn's TP is way more powerful than anything else. You can see Lehens engage here, why I think he deserves MVP over Tarzan. He's just queuing on the targets that are knocked up, and boom, the kick lands, and the game is over. The game is super over. There is absolutely no recovery from G2. Tanks are the biggest counter to the enemy team composition, and Griffin has 3 of them. Mercury is such a strong buy, and Tarzan is monster fed. Tarzan is looking to back off, and Mickey, this is how G2 managed to use their Shen ult for absolutely nothing, and G2 are just completely lost. This is where you agree to lose and move on. Was the first game already reviewed? Yes, it was. I'm going to upload this VOD onto YouTube, and that's it. I think we've gone through some of Griffin's massive draft wins today, because I think this drafting I saw today was really insane. Honestly, the drafting I saw from Griffin was next level. I wish, you know, it was just really insane. Really good vision of the game, punishing these disgusting KO picks, and winning. Everyone in Griffin has Ocean Champion Pool. I think they just have very good understanding of which champions are good right now. Honestly, I think G2 got severely outdrafted 2 games, and that's why it's hard to judge these exact 2 games. G2 are quite sloppy, honestly. So I would like to summarize these 2 games. Complete draft annihilation and superb play from Griffin. Superb play from Griffin. G2 honestly just got outdrafted. And I would play worse. G2 play worse. Sorry. Your voice is super soothing. Okay. I think Akali is monster good. I think I think just Griffin drafting is beautiful, and when they get a lead, they don't let go. So macro-wise, Griffin is looking super strong and honestly looking like a team that could win the tournament. And I think based off of this series alone, I think Griffin is looking like the best team at this tournament. Based off of this day. But this could change very fast, and I'm very well aware of that because we haven't seen SKT play yet in the second week. I just think the game that people are praising so much, RNG versus SKT, was a very sloppy game. And I think Griffin are drafting better than anyone, and they're playing very, very tight. Very, very tight. Meaning, when I say a team is playing very tight, it means that they are not leaving themselves open for any major mistakes. They're waiting for the right timings, and they are waiting for the right opportunities to strike, and they understand their composition very, very well. I think that the game G2 versus C9, where they were quite behind against C9 and C9 managed to get a Nashor, that also showed how capable Griffin are in terms of finding the right opportunities to win the game, because they're always looking. Akali is indeed one of the best blinds, however she's not worthy to pick early. I disagree. What are power picks? All these power picks that people are talking about are just myths. YamatoCannon is absurdly OP. We see it winning almost every game. So YamatoCannon is absurdly OP. Qiyana is okay. And then what? People are first picking Gragas. People are first picking Kai'Sa. I think Akali is really, really high prio. And I think people should wake up. People should definitely wake up. When you have a top laner and a mid laner that can both play Akali, then Akali is a monster pick. So Gragas. Another thing is, you can take a look right here. Syndra is not a power pick. Syndra is one of the biggest myths of the tournament. I'll tell you that much. Syndra is definitely one of the biggest myths of the tournament. Renekton top has a crazy win ratio. I don't know how to check this. How do we check the win ratio of champions? So, World Championship. So 100% ban of this guy. Picks 50% win ratio on Qiyana. So she's not too crazy. 82% pick ban winning on Renekton. So there are teams that know how to execute on Renekton. That's good. I think Renekton is still very powerful. Play-ins kind of made us lose the scent. Syndra is the biggest myth of the tournament, next to Kayle. So Syndra, 21 bans, 10 picks, 20% win ratio. 2 wins, 8 losses. Unless your name is Perks or you're a good mid laner that can play Syndra, don't pick Syndra. So this is Caps 1 win, and then I don't know who else won a game on Syndra. I think it was potentially Rookie. Akali, 16, 15, 56 win ratio. That's respectable. Considering blue side, you need to find a good strong blind picks. I think this is still respectable. Kayle, 10 picks, 5-5. I think Kayle works when the enemy is much worse than you. So SKT against Fnatic, enemy are worse than you. It works. RNG versus Clutch Gaming, Kayle works, the enemy is worse than you. FPX playing Kayle, enemy is much worse, the pick works. Today, Griffin, G2 against Hong Kong Attitude, the enemy is much worse, Kayle is working. So I think Kayle gets away. IG versus Damwon, I guess that's the outlier. I don't remember how that game played out. I remember I reviewed it, but I honestly can't remember how it played out. So where do we have it? Damwon versus... Where is Damwon versus IG? Oh yeah, this was a massive cocktail. Wow, this was a massive cocktail. This is the game where Jackie Love runs it down. So the IG games are not games we can judge from any champions, because I feel like the destiny of IG games is always in the hands of the Inters. So this is This is weird. And as you can see, if you think Kale is responsible at all for this victory, then, you know, take another hit of that big bong you're smoking, because right now she's 100 CS behind and not the reason at all behind Damon's victory. And then here Rookie desperately trying to 1v9, but it doesn't work as he's looking for the dash on Canyon, gets knocked, and boom. Just GG. GG, GG, da da, ho ho. So this was just Rookie and Akali trying to 1v9. Rakan, I really don't understand why the hell people don't pick more Rakan. Rakan is busted. Elise, I think if you're a good team, if you're playing against a good team, Elise is very high prior. Win ratio is deceptive. LeBlanc, honestly, I love LeBlanc. I wish we saw more LeBlanc. But as long as Ryze is in the picture, I think people don't want to pick LeBlanc. But I think the LeBlanc matchup has been buffed because you no longer get Aftershock from just Wing, so you need to EW. So you have a bit of a more bigger window to do stuff. I think Ryze is absurdly OP. I think Ryze is beautiful. I think Ryze is what Kale wants to be. I'll tell you that. Ryze scales better than Kale and is better into Kale and has more maneuverability and more options to create situations where you can play, you know, around the Ryze, or Ryze can play around Prio because he can push so well. I think Ryze is just what Kale wants to be. Kale is a dog champ. I think Kale is disgusting, and as long as I don't see any new results or anything shocking, I think Kale, it belongs in the dumpster. I can link the website indeed. This is the website. Make some noise, Swordikins. Thank you so much. Who has a 13% win ratio with 47 presence? That is, in fact, Tristana. So Tristana won game 1, and that is when Faker played it. I think Tristana is still very strong, but there's no good Tristana players at this tournament, sadly. I think a lot of these losses have been Tristana mid, in fact. So we can take a look. Tristana. We had Kobe playing it on bottom against FPX. Mission played it in mid. Humanoid played it in the mid. And then we had Niski play it. Huni played it. Just a bunch of low tier teams playing it. So, you know, I think this win ratio is very deceptive. I think Tristana is S tier. S tier champion. No Reckless. Reckless did not play it. He's not playing AD carries this tournament, apparently. Will the real fanatic please stand up? What do you think about the Azir? Too slow, power spikes are too weak to compensate. I'm going to, yeah.